Hey gang, this is Rodivia Brigham here with Proposabid, and I have a special guest today, Pavel Dev. And Pavel is with Level Up Remodeling LLC based out of San Diego. Pavel offers a wide range of experience in the renovation and remodeling industry, has a very unique business model in which he is able to coordinate vendors under his business and have those remodels done across the United States. Pavel is a BLS provider, and that means that basic life support. I think that is amazing, considering I was BLS certified and ACLS certified in the fire service when I was in the fire service. And today we're just going to have Pavel talk about some of the vendor stats out there that are fairly true, um, along with, as a vendor, some of the sacrifices that vendors have to make, the efforts around the scope of work, and also vendor turnaround time, and mainly what is it that vendors kind of need from properties in order to be successful so that they can get the work and put food on their plate. I personally know that in my experience, vendors sacrifice quite a bit of time and money to get these bids and estimates out. They do a lot of pre-marketing, information gathering, contacting properties, collaborating with subcontractors. And this is all before the vendor, such as Pavel, will submit a bid or be able to go on site to be able to give accurate information so that the properties can make financially relevant decisions on how they want to remodel or repair. And in that today, we're just going to have that discussion, and I'm very honored to have you here because you were actually introduced through Ivan, um, who recommended your services, and I've tried to submit different bids to you. They just didn't quite work out. Submit different scopes of work didn't quite work out based on your time, resources, and those needs at that time. So Pavel, thank you for coming, and please let the audience know what you got going on.
Hello, Rodevia and everyone else who's out there. Like Rodevia said, my name is Pavel, and we are doing remodeling all over US. We had multiple, actually the most projects we had were in Kansas City, Missouri. I believe we had like 5 projects last year. We had one of those projects were with Ivan, and the first project we did was actually for Ivan in Salt Lake City, Utah. But we started 4 years ago with just painting. We were doing painting in San Diego specifically. And then when the war started a couple years ago in Ukraine, a lot of guys from Ukraine started moving. And all of them, well, majority of them were doing construction all over Europe from the age they turned 15. So they had a bunch of experience. And I was like, well, I have to figure something out, get them on board because they hustle, they wanna make money. And the quality of the job that they can provide is way better than what's up here because the requirements in Europe is way higher actually than in US. So we started and we did, I don't even remember how many units we did for Ivan in Salt Lake City, but that project was for like 5 months. And then we went to Florida, Melbourne. We had one more client up there for 2 properties because he closed like 2 properties at the same time. And we did a little over 50 units there before we went to Kansas City. And in Kansas City, we started working with Ivan again. And we did 2 properties for him. One was Hunter's Glen, and another was I forgot the name of the other property, but we did a bunch of work up there as well. And it's very convenient what we offer because my guys are staying on site and they live, well, the property provides apartments for my guys to stay. So they specifically up there for that specific property, for that specific project. So there is no like, the crew didn't show up today because they had to go to another job site and do some work up there. That never happens because the guys are there full time, 6 days a week, 8 to, well, sometimes 8 to 8, but sometimes, usually they work 8 to 6, well, the full day, to get everything done on time, quickly. Yeah, I mean, that's just very convenient. I don't know a lot of companies, well, actually don't know any companies who offer this kind of services where they just move all over US and stay on site and get the timeline, can provide the timeline that we can.
And so for that timeline, what are you kind of looking at for your guys? Like, so,
So usually, let's say we already know what materials to buy. Also, I offer materials. I offer a lot of nice fixtures that we buy from Amazon, and those Amazon fixture prices beat Lowe's, Home Depot, HD Supply, Chadwell. Well, all of those guys, the prices are better, like 2 times better, and the quality, we only buy like the stuff that has over 500 reviews and it's like over 4 stars, you know. So those looks really nice, those looks modern, way better than what those other big stores offer. And I mean, everyone for whom we provided those fixtures, the finishes, they just love it, you know. And usually, if we already on the same line with the client on materials, on everything, 1 bedroom apartment usually takes 3 to 4 days to get it done from start to finish if there is not too many change orders. If it's like standard unit, you come, you do the full demo, repaint, completely new flooring, baseboards, all the finishes, new appliances. Sometimes it takes 3 days, but on average, 4 days for 1 and 2 bedroom apartment.
I like that list off of your materials competitors, right? Because
Yep, I provide every single link. So if after we're done with the project, if something breaks, which rarely happens, because one of the best comparison that I can give you is kitchen faucets and bathroom faucets. What I get, the kitchen faucet that I get from Amazon costs $40. The same kitchen faucet from Lowe's or Home Depot will cost you $160. So that's like $120 just on that. Uh, Same with bathroom faucet. The one we buy, it costs with taxes and everything $30. The same one from Home Depot will cost you $140. So that's like 100 something dollars just on each faucet. That's how much you're gonna save on that stuff, you know. Uh, it just it's just very nice that we can go down that so much just on some fixtures, you know. On average, if you compare Lowe's to Amazon, what we get on the finishes, you save up to $500, $600 for 1 bedroom apartment.
okay. So let's go back because materials are important, and it's one of the things that are inflated, right, in the cost.
Yep.
So that's good to know. Let's go back to the requirements in Europe is higher than the US. So there's higher quality work. I'm very curious about this. It's not the first time I've heard it, but I'd like to get your experience around it and maybe how, when working with Ivan, like, what kind of eye-popping experience did he have around your quality of work? Because Ivan just doesn't recommend anybody.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you this. We have one of the best drywall work out there. When there is like, if the piece of drywall needs to be replaced in the middle of the wall, my guys can do it so good. You will, after it's done and painted, you won't know where exactly it was replaced, but it was, you know. It just, the reason the quality of the job it's better in Europe than in US, because in Europe people don't make as much money as in US, obviously. And that's why when people spend on remodeling, they're so picky at everything, and it's not as much as here in US, you know, like, because I mean, people in US make on average more money than people in Europe. That's why when people spend money in Europe, they're way more pickier than people in US. That's just, I mean, that's something that's the first reason, and that's the most important reason why.
Interesting. I like how that switches up, right? So you're
Yep.
more aware and cognizant of how much of what you're spending, so therefore you get better quality.
Yep. And
Because you,
also, sorry.
what, what?
Also, we never upcharge for materials. So what I spend at Amazon, I mean, so right now we are doing a project. I buy all of the materials, and client just pays me upfront, because I mean, it's like I can put 100K of my own money, and then on labor and et cetera, et cetera. But if they don't want to pay for the material, if they don't want to wire me for the materials, I just send them the links. I tell them the quantities, and they just pay themselves. But if we provide the materials, we don't upcharge, because we make our cut on labor side.
On the labor side, got you.
Yep.
And that's where the high quality is on top of the materials, but the labor is also the craftsmanship,
Yep.
which
And
people.
the price that we have right now on the labor side it's very competitive with the market.
So what projects you got coming up? And then we'll dive into some other stuff. But what you got going on right now, and what do you see in the future for yourself?
So right now we have a project in Kansas City. We are kind of halfway through it. We did almost 60 units, and we have 50 units left to do. Here in Louisville, in 2.5 months, my guys are flying through the units right now. In 2.5 months, we will be done with 93 units.
Mm,
That's with 4 crews.
that's
So
with
that,
Ford Cruise.
yes. Honestly, I wasn't expecting myself that my guys are be going so quick, but they are doing 6 days a week, 8 till 7.
Mm,
That's so, I
hmm.
mean, that's very fast.
And so once you get done with those, so you did 60, got 50 more, is that client recommending you to other clients to finish off or start or rehab any other properties from this particular referral?
Yes, well, so with this client, we already did couple projects. First project was in Kansas City, and then we tried to do one in Texas, but they didn't find funding.
Mm,
It's very hard for the apartment complexes to remodel because of the finances. It's an issue all over US right now.
mm.
So uh, right now it's a little harder to get, well, it's not a little harder, it's way harder to get clients for the remodels. But here in Louisville, we will have this project for the next 4 months, because we have a little over 100 in here to do, and 60 or 50 to do in Kansas City. And
Mhm.
right now we are trying to get another project in Texas. Well, we've been trying to get it for the last 6 months. We already gave all the prices, because they have 24 buildings. They wanna repaint all of them and do like 80 or 100 units remodel inside.
I take it with a
But
takeover or some sort of buyout.
no, so they already own this complex, but they are just trying to find finances to start doing remodeling.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I know you're gonna do well on that one. So now I kind of want to thank you for telling us what you do. It's really interesting how you go about your model, and I think it's amazing that you're able to bring such high quality to the industry
Thank you.
and get the owners the items that they need and the price point that they're looking for and a fast turnaround so you don't have vacancy. All those things are a part of the package. So speaking of ownership, right, there's some vendor stats out there that I kind of want to go over with you, and I think that you can really speak to these things. These are stats that I'm finding from the owner side or property management side or single family residency. And like currently I have 4 projects out there. One's an unfinished basement, another one's a mold project. I also have SB 721s that are hanging out there, which are balcony inspections, balcony replacements, and basically it's a Senate-based law that came into play because one of the balconies collapsed here in Berkeley, California, and now there's a mandate that the balconies be inspected and replaced and remodeled, especially for wood structures. So for my mold replacement or my mold testing, what I'm finding is that I'm able to get the vendors to respond to the scope of work, but then the property owner is now at a standstill, at a stall, or making decisions. And so therefore it affects the vendor's bottom line and how they, can pick up projects and how much money they're spending on their estimators to make these estimations. And what I'm finding is that communication, response rate, and the submissions rates are terrible in the industry. So for instance, for the vendor stat side, submission rates on average, only 30% of vendors who are invited to bid on a project actually submit a proposal. And this is by the Aberdeen Group. And that means that 70% of vendors who are coming out aren't submitting proposals. And that also means that if you have a client that tried to get 5 vendors out there and only 2 showed up, and only 30% of the 2, which is 1.5, right?
Yeah.
And then that bid isn't apples for apples. It's not even what you asked for. And it took you 15, 20 days to get that one bid. That's a detriment to the property and to the project. The second piece is that there's no communication. So 68% of vendors say that they never receive feedback from the submissions that they make. This leads to high frustration and a decreased interest in future opportunity. And that's from Vendorful. And I'll let you speak to all this. I'm just talking about my experience here. So one of the things that Proposabid does is that we provide feedback to vendors when they don't win the awards, right? One of the ways our business model was originally set up was we supply 4 more bids. The owner picks those bids. They have a primary vendor that they want to go with, and then we guardrail into having that owners award a vendor that they're interested in. And that way the vendor is guaranteed, out of all the bids that were submitted, someone is guaranteed to receive an award and put food on their plate. That's no longer our structure, because then the owners will say, well, I went with this vendor and I didn't like the work. Proposabid, you gave me a bad deal. And now it's just bad blood, right? Because now the property owner is kind of pigeonholed into this one vendor. So what we do now is that our average incoming bids is 7 bids per project, which is pretty damn high, for the industry.
That's good, yeah.
And so in that, what we have is that we submit all of the bids to the client. And then the client has the opportunity to select 4 bids. Those bids come back redacted, right? So those bids are submitted redacted to the client. The client submits their 4 bids, and then out of those 4 bids, they then receive the unredacted information. Now it's on them to contact the vendors, but it still doesn't help the vendors in that 38% When Proposabid does it, it does help in that 38% receive feedback because we make those connections, right? So I'm sure you're out there and you just spoke to it while we were offline that, you know, you did a lookup, you had a bunch of properties that were 1 and 2 bedrooms, you gave the square feet, you gave the estimations, you made the connections either via email, phone call, or some sort of third-party software to make these connections. You gave valuable information to about 30 or 40 people and only 1 person responded. And this is the pre-work that's being done for properties even before they ask for this information. That's not even including the fact that you're out there making bids, or you're trying to get that property owner who you've been after for about 6 months. You know, they have to get financing, and you're constantly on the footing trying to provide value. So that's the piece on communication that we're really trying to solve here, is at least give some sort of feedback to the vendors like yourself on why you didn't win the bid. Now, it's easier for property management companies or an LLC or a third-party entity to give that feedback because they constantly work in this area, versus a single family residency where mom and dad really doesn't know what they're looking at. There's a lot of, how do you say, educational items that I go through on teaching single family residencies to be able to read the bids and then make the best educated decision that they can make based on the fact that they don't do this full time. They're not property management.
Oh yeah.
And then the third piece is the bid response rate, which is absolutely terrible. And it also goes into the fixtures of the 2 previous stat, which is approximately 20 to 30% of bids solicited by property owners or by businesses never result in an award of the contract. And that was what we were trying to solve initially with guardrailing and pigeonholing the properties into making a decision and picking a vendor and giving that reward. But because 20 to 30% of bids solicited by property owners are never awarded, this then makes an unresponsive and uncompetitive pricing for the vendors. So for instance, I had a property in Stockton, California that needed a roof replacement. And in that roof replacement, it was 7 roofs. It took them about 3.5 years to get bids because vendors didn't want to come out there. It was a bad neighborhood. The vendors were being shot at. The property was really ran down. Vendors weren't really responding because of the messaging and the scope of work that wasn't even, put out there for the vendor. They got 1 bid over a course. I think they got 2 bids over a course of 3 years. I came in and was able to get 7 bids in 28 business days for the same property. However, some of the vendors that I was contacting was like, hey, this property had contacted me. We already submitted bids to them, apparently. And now they're mad about it, right? Because their estimators it's a $400,000 roof project. Their estimators are taking time to get the materials, to get the information that's needed, make sure the warranty is right? Things like that, terms and conditions, and packaging it together. And then come to find out the same property has already requested bids from some of the pools of vendors that I received, that I was connected with. And they didn't want to submit any more bids, but they submitted because I told them, and I followed through, which was that I will give you the communication that you need, and I will, make sure that you are submitted to the client and that they do read your bids if it's apples for apples. I can't guarantee that you're going to win the award, but I can guarantee that you will hear from me either way and we can have a discussion, and I will share those bids with you, redacted, because they shouldn't know their competition, but they should know their competition in a way of the services that they're providing. And that's the other piece that Proposabid does, high quality work. Anyway, so with that, I think those stats are really interesting. Do you want to speak to any of that in your own experience?
Yeah. So every single time I go somewhere to see the property or something, I always give a bid. The only bid I didn't give last year was for your barn. You remember the one we spoke about?
Yeah, in Waxahachie, I had an 8
Yeah,
stable barn that wanted to be torn down and put into a 4-3. Yes.
yep. That was I'm so specific because that was the only bid that I didn't give the price for, because we spoke with you and we realized that it will be kind of hard to bring my guys there, find a place where to stay and stuff. But I always give bids. But the problem is when we give bids or I give it through someone else,
Mhm.
I rarely hear back. Like, just, I mean, if you don't want to go through, just let me know. I mean, no, to hear no is okay. At least I won't be expecting anything and wait and like email you back again and again.
Mhm.
Or if the prices don't work, I mean, let me know on that as well. I mean, we can always work on the prices. So to be honest, like, I do my part. I do everything I can to get the job. It's just from the proper. It's just a little hard to hear back from the property, like to waiting and contacting until they contact me back and let me know something. So I mean the
Mhm.
communication is awful. I mean 68%. I mean I think it's worse than that. It's not
Yeah,
that good,
conservative.
to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah. And whenever if they get back to me and they tell me that this and this need adjustments, I always work on that and I send it back, and then I wait again on them to respond me back, because the price breakdown that I usually send out for the bid, it's like a menu. We have everything is very specific. We have a bedroom one, bedroom two, hallway, kitchen,
Mhm.
living room, bathroom. Every room has its own breakdown, like hinges replacement,
Mhm.
doorknob replacement, lights replacement. If something needs to stay, you can just cross it over from the proposal. The price is gonna stay the same. Um,
Right.
I mean, and it all just comes down to waiting and to hear back from the property,
Mm.
and it's that's the hardest part for me, honestly, because they rarely contact back with feedbacks. But if Proposabid can solve that, I mean, I think it's going to be a huge boost to this market.
Absolutely. And that's something that I really pride myself on, is having the conversations with the vendors. And, I talk to people in this industry that don't work in property management or in the construction area, and they might work in grants or loans or anything that has to do with bids and proposals, requests for proposals. And some folks are like, just send a quick reply on what it is. And I agree with that. What I really want to do is provide my vendors with more feedback than just a no. So I really
Yeah.
strive to send the bids over that was a competitive bid. And Proposabid also usually posts those bids online redacted. So that way you can know what it is that the other vendors are offering and possibly create more options and lower prices and things like that for the client. But yeah, the ownership of communication is on the properties themselves, and I I'm starting to see that the properties take advantage of the fact that the vendors are expendable. But what they're starting to find out is that if your property is not behaving in a way that builds relationships, that vendors talk and they will not submit a bid, and vendors are starting to require cash for bids, right? So like for SB 721, if you want a bid, you have to pay me for the bid first. And therefore, I don't care if you respond or not for the most part,
Hmm.
right? But you do want them to respond. You do want to win the awards. You do want those things. But you're going to have to pay me for my time just to submit the bids. I'm not seeing that 100%, but I am starting to hear the rumblings of that. And that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be devastating for properties, because now you're paying $2,000-3,000 to get the bids that you want, to get bids that might not even be apples for apples, right? Because they're not
Yeah,
providing,
yeah.
we're not providing a scope of work to the vendors. So thank you for that. So the vendor sacrifice, the time and resources wasted, and the necessary unscheduling of meetings, or showing up to the sites unnecessarily, the conducting of research, right, for the clients, is all costing, and then to never hear back is definitely taking a toll, especially during this inflationary period. And trying to find high quality vendors, high quality subcontractors, it's definitely going to roll downhill or roll uphill to where the cost is going to be put on the onus of the property. Let's see. So let's talk about the scope of work, right? And that's my favorite thing. And the reason why it's my favorite thing is because I want to provide such a magnificent experience for the client, to where that experience then translates into all the information that's needed on a piece of paper or digitally. And I can market that scope out to the vendors, and they just love that, because what they don't receive from property management or single family residencies is a scope of work. Now, where do you see scopes of work at? Large construction builds, uh, such as school, like a school wants to put a football stadium in. They want to replace their uh, parking structure, right? So mainly big businesses will put out scopes of work to attract or request for proposal. So that's how I kind of got my scopes of work, was looking at how school districts called out RFPs, or request for proposals, right? And so from there, I tore out all the pertinent sections to create the scope of work model, right? So that I can pull all the information from the client, along with something that's called a punch list. And the punch list is, for the audience, a list of questions that you would ask your client so that you can create information to create the scope of work. So, scope of work, how often do you get one from your client?
We always, every single time, if I go to the property, that's what we start with. We discuss what needs to be done, the scope of work. And what I like to do is we offer full scope. Like you name it, we do it, Like if we go to the unit and it needs just standard remodeling, and then there is plumbing issues or electrical issues, we take care of all of that, because what I'm always trying to do is to keep everything to one company, obviously to ourselves, so the client doesn't need to hustle and call to multiple different vendors, schedule them, have them come out, because if, let's say, if there is electrical issue and they have someone else do it, that's gonna slow down our work. And usually when electricians come, they just gonna to report any wall they want, and they're not gonna get it fixed. They're just gonna take care of the electrical, and then we have to come back and do this work again, the fixing the drywall. We have to charge again, uh, but if we take care of the electrical issues, obviously everything else, like the aftermath of that, is already going to be included in the price. It's going to be way faster because we're just going to start taking care of this issue on the spot. There is going to be no delays. It's just very convenient and very efficient. If the company can offer the full scope, and if there is any order changes, if it's all kept to one company.
Got you. And what we kind of specialize in is doing an intake information form. And in that information form, what we do is that we take all the incoming information, we create a scope of work for you, for the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you can actually honestly say, based on the information, is this something that I kind of want to work on? Do I actually want to come out and see the property? Versus the phone calls, the emails, the back and forth, and you don't know whether or not this is something that you kind of want to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really imperative from Proposabid's perspective that we do the intake from the owners or properties perspective, create the scope to give to you to make sure that we're getting the right vendors on board that want to come out and do the work first.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that after we do the intake, we create the scope and then we market it out. We start off with a 100-mile radius from the property address.
Mm-hmm.
And within maybe 6 to 7 hours, we will get phone calls and feedback. Like
Mm-hmm.
the budget is off, or what kind of swing gate do you want, right? Or Door King, which is a security system, how many Door Kings do you want? It looks like based on the photos of the property, you might need more than one swing gate. So it's providing that feedback that the vendor can give to make an educated decision on whether or not they even want to make that drive in the first place, versus
Mm-hmm.
getting the call. You have on-site staff that doesn't really know specifically what they need because it's all just verbal communication. And now you have a vendor that comes out that has to create the scope of work. What we do is provide our scope of work based on the client's experience and needs, and then you can piggyback off of that and not have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, because you're able to get that information and give additional information based on what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And property management companies don't have those resources. As a matter of fact, there's another stat here that 13% of property management companies have the capability of training their on-site staff to be able to read a bid or be able to communicate with vendors. And that's not even including single-family residencies. They're, who need a roof replacement or, want to remodel their whole entire property. What are they looking at? They don't know. It's just mom and dad or grandma or whoever the case may be. So our scopes of work are definitely to help you and help vendors be able to organize their lives in a timely fashion so that they're able to make those decisions. Yeah, because information can be inaccurate and incomplete on the scope, and then there's misunderstandings and errors in the bids, and that's what we're really trying to minimize for property management companies and for single-family residencies. So let's talk a little bit about how are you finding your clients as a vendor? So for me, right, I am searching for vendors all the time. So I'm a resource because I have clients. And I have two sides. I have the property side and I have the vendor side. And you as a vendor is constantly looking for those resources and those clients. How do you go about finding your clients? And what would you like to see from the industry to help you secure more work around that?
So the best way, obviously, is when you do the work for the client and then he recommends you to someone else. We still have that chain starting with Ivan. It's still ongoing. We didn't have a break after that. After Salt Lake City, we went to Florida, then we went to Kansas, then we had small project in Texas. So it's still going. That's the best way because when apartment complexes are doing remodels or any other big projects, any other companies, they wanna work with someone they can trust, and when it's a referral, obviously they will know that, okay, this guy he worked with this client, he's my friend, we can trust him, probably he's a good vendor, he'll do a good job. So sometimes when they get sometimes they don't really, I feel like they don't like to they are more pickier when it's someone they never heard of and they don't know the company. Um, but I have a guy, he works with me. His name is Alex. He finds clients for me. He goes to the conferences for when there is like real estate conferences. He always goes out there and he markets our company. So this is the second best option for us to find clients. And third option, which is not the best, it's not good. It's just cold calling and checking if the property needs any help, but it hardly results in something.
I would love to comment on that because I actually turned off my cold calling. So what I do
Yeah.
now is referral, right? So I've signed up for meetups, for Eventbrite. I do door knocks. Like I actually go down to, I'm in San Francisco, I'm in the Bay Area, Oakland specifically,
Hmm.
but there's 30 property management companies here in the Bay Area that I'm, trying to engage with. So I go down to the corporate office, right? I'm hitting all the buttons to be buzzed in and all that stuff. And I got my little one pamphlet. I really enjoy the one-on-one time and the referral piece. Like I'm not hungry or desperate for, hmm, you go out there and you get punched in the face when you're doing cold calling, and it definitely toughens you up and you figure out strategies. But talking with people one-on-one and having that concierge platform, so to speak, that you create for your clients, I think is definitely the best way in which we're going. And then also connecting with vendors such as yourself and other vendors out there that I keep relationships with, which were recommended based on the work that they're doing. So that's kind of how I'm really focused towards is, showing up to people's platforms, to their organizations, to their meetups, introducing myself, giving my business card, talking about what I got going on, and then seeing if there's a partnership department that I can be a part of. I don't mind starting at the bottom and demonstrating the skill set, and then working from there. Um,
Oh
and
yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, when you see someone and you talk in person, it's way better than cold calling. You're not even looking for anything, and someone calls you and he says, "Hey, do you need guys remodeling?" Like, who is this guy, you know? Sometimes they're just gonna hang up the phone and not even keep listening to you. But
yeah,
yeah,
mhm,
also like one of the very good ways to find new clients is when you do the project for when you start a project directly with the owners, and then you get to know the property management company,
mhm,
and then most likely if you're on at that project working directly with the owners, and probably that property management company, they don't know a really good company who can does like full remodels, and then you
mhm.
just get to know them and you offer them your services, and they might recommend you to other complexes to start doing new jobs. That's how we actually did one project in Kansas out of those 5 projects.
Mhm.
It was through Ivan's complex, the company that was managing his complex. They recommended us to another complex, and we did a couple units up there.
Nice. And I think it's definitely worth having those really tight knit conversations and connections. That way you can
Yeah,
expand out and have
yeah.
more resources. But we still definitely get out in the trenches, right, Pavel? We're still cold calling, we're still door knocking, virtual door knocking, we're still automating a lot of pieces. But for right now, this year has been mainly for me just going and meeting people, shaking hands, and just talking about what I got going on, mainly trying to gather information on how other people are doing their business structures, like what are they seeing out in the wild, how it, is it interesting? Can we talk about it? And then if there's some synergy there, then we can work together. I actually was able to create partnership with a company called Nestment, and Nestment does co-buying opportunities as a mortgage industry in the mortgage software as a service. And so one of the first projects we currently have coming up is an unfinished basement out in Hudson Falls, New York, I think it is. So we got to get this unfinished basement done. Well, ideally, they would want to get this unfinished basement done before the snow comes, right? So then there's
Mm-hmm.
seasonality that comes with this business too. So if you're on the East Coast and it snows, you're not getting any, as Kansas, it snows in Kansas, I think it does, right?
Yeah,
Missouri,
it does. Yeah.
and so it's seasonal too. But so having those connections, which Nesmith shout out, I'm grateful to y'all because they, uh, I went to a Eventbrite, met with Niles and Matt and Mark, and they're like, oh, this is a no-brainer. Like, people are buying homes, and in order for them to qualify for parts of the mortgage, they need bids for that to figure out how much the ARB is going to be. And it was a no-brainer. They didn't have that resource set
Mm-hmm.
up there. And so I'm inching into that platform and helping their clients, which are also, some of them are they're starting to move into multifamily, which is exciting, and you'll be on my list when there's some really, there's a
For
big
sure.
need there, right? Especially if they're transferring into, these property owners want to transfer into Section 8, and they have to have different qualifications or tax credit, and they have to have different qualifications on how the properties are supposed to be built out, maintained, and those things. So um, I think, yeah, I think that's, I could talk to you all day, really, because I just love how you think. And you've got some
Thank
really
you.
great insights. And I think that you are one of the reasons why the industry, especially, with how you're doing things, will thrive with people like you. And the other piece is, everyone,
And
Pavel,
like you.
yeah, Pavel picks up the phone. So when you call Pavel, he picks up.
24/7.
24/7. And so most of the time I'll leave a message. Text message, there might be, a couple of minutes delay, but Pavel picks up the phone. And so those are the kind of vendors that I'm really interested in connecting with, because this is a very fast moving business. My business itself, right? Proposabid is based on speed, right? So we have a 30-minute, I wish it was a 30-minute bid turnaround. It's not. I'm working, but we have a 30 business day turnaround, and our average turnaround time for bids from the time of inception of the scope of the intake form to the bids being aggregated apples for apples and sent to the owner is approximately 4 business days, which turns out to be 7 days, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not counting the weekends. And so the industry itself is about 25 business days, right? Just to get 3 bids. So we're averaging 4 bids, or we're averaging 7 bids in 4 business days across the board. It doesn't matter what the project is right now, right? So for that eight, that property in Waxahachie, which was definitely uh, a tough one, right? So, and thank you for just having the conversation with me, right, about that property. So basically, I had a client that I was on the Humble for, doing it on the Humble, had architectural drawings, had just purchased property for 225 or something like that out in Waxahachie, that's next to Wellington, which is a very upscale part of Florida. Eight stable, like, I think the horses were still in the stables at the time that they were taking the photos and things like that. Wanting to turn it into a 4-3, had architectural drawings, but the drawings weren't quite up to speed because of the interior. The interior drawings weren't up to speed of what the architectures were looking for the people I was reaching out to. I started the campaign mid-February. I think I got my first response. I started the campaign March 3rd, and I reached out to 58 clients. Within the first 3 hours, I had 3 responses. Now, this is people responding. Within the first 16 days, I had 27 responses. A month and a half later, over a period of a month and a half, I had three conversations with folks that were willing to take a look at the property, go down and see the property. But all those vendors said the interior, the fixtures, the crown molding, how you want the bathroom, none of that was built out. So what I learned in that experience was, with properties that are being built from the ground up, we have to get excellent architectural drawings inside and out. And if the client doesn't want to do that, that it's going to cost money just for them to build out that architectural drawing, and it's probably going to cost them twice as much for the square footage, especially in that area. So he was trying to spend 125 grand per square foot, which he probably could have done, but he wanted a 4.3, and you're not going to get that. You're going to get a studio, right? Because the square footage was for that area was between $500 and $700 per square foot. Because these were $1 million properties that he was sitting next to. And I knew this going in, like I intellectually knew it. I couldn't articulate it until I heard the professionals tell me what it really was, and I was able to narrow this down. So basically this experience, when we first went into it, I said, this is probably just to educate the client that they're not going to have their dream home built in Waxahachie, Florida, and they're going to have to sell. And that's exactly what he did. He sold the property for a couple of $100 more than what he actually paid for. So that was that. I feel really good about that, because it actually gave the owner insight onto what he wasn't able to do. Now, are you going to hang on to this property for tax purposes and all that? You're not going to be able to build your home, because he also needed to qualify for the mortgage too, to be able to build it out. So that's a whole nother piece. So I was working with Lynn Ottmeyer, who's a mortgage broker out in Florida. So we were working on this together for free to get the client the information that they needed to know that they wouldn't be able to qualify for the mortgage, or they didn't want to qualify for a mortgage like that, because the dollar amount.
You got lucky if he found you.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I asked Lynn, did they have any clients that might be interested in taking a stab at this? It was just for remodeling, and do you have property repairs, and you have a roof that needs to be replaced? And she was like, actually, I have very high net worth, or clients that are purchasing properties and they're trying to renovate them. Okay. And this one just so happenly was a horse stable. I said, sure, why not? Let's see where this gets us. And so I reached out to you, and you were like, well, where is it? Yeah, don't have any, don't have any room to place them, and I'm sure they don't want to camp out. So
yeah.
But the next one I've got in Hudson, I'm going to reach out. It's an unfinished basement. If you've got staff there, of course, I'm going to get the 3 bids or 4 bids, because that's the business model. But you're always on my list of vendors. And back to Pavel picks up the phone, right? So if you have any interest, Pavel, how can folks reach you? How do they get in contact with you?
Through my phone number, through email, and also they on our website we have a contact us line. Okay. They can just fill out the information, their first, last name, email address, phone number, and also like a short notice of what they need or what they want, and then we're gonna call them back within a couple hours, obviously, and talk to them and see in details.
Okay, well, cool. Thank you, Pavel, for your time. We're going to stay on. I'm going to cut this short. We're going to just chat a little more to the community out there. Thank you for listening and watching. If you need any resources, connections, you need any property repairs and those bids for those repairs, you can reach out to Proposabid. I'm Rodivia Brigham, and it's been an amazing time. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.